1989, Juan Gonzalez, the co-host of Democracy Now!, wrote a book entitled Harvest of Empire. It tells of how Latin Americans fled to the United States in great numbers in recent decades, after American business and military activities in their home countries destroyed their economies and the stability of their governments. Gonzalez explains how at the end of World War II, the people of the Third World started coming to the West, and they came precisely to those countries that had once been their colonial masters. So that in France, they don't know what to do about the Algerians, the Tunisians, and Moroccans. In England, they don't know what to do about the Indians, the Pakistanis, and the Jamaicans. And here in the United States, we don't know what to do about all the Latin Americans. Those are precisely the former colonies of those empires, and they're changing and transforming the very composition of those nations. And so the United States is far from dealing with immigration problems alone. England has immigration problems. France has immigration problems. Germany has immigration problems. Gonzalez writes, "It was the harvest of the colonial empires that made those countries so wealthy. Well, the capital came, but now the peoples are coming as well." And Gonzalez believes that Americans' general ignorance of our own colonial past, combined with the perceived threat from immigrants to take American jobs, accounts for the general resentment toward Latino immigrants among much of the American public. He goes on to explain how our lack of comprehensive immigration policy is beneficial, especially to the Republicans seeking to maintain the demographic composition that enables their electability to political office. He writes, "If 11 to 12 million people are eligible to legalize their status and become voters, it will change the political landscape of America for decades to come." And they understand that it could spell the doom of the Republican Party for a generation. But clearly, our lack of comprehensive immigration policy cannot be blamed on just one political party. President Barack Obama, far outpacing George W. Bush, has deported more than 2.5 million people since he took office. Families are thrown into crisis. Children come home from school and find they've lost their mothers or fathers. The small incomes that once sustained them and their families are suddenly gone, and those who remain behind often become destitute. There are now some 5,000 children in foster care because their parents have been detained or deported, and it is estimated that this number will rise to 15,000 within 5 years, while, of course, President Obama's oldest daughter has just been admitted to Harvard. At the present moment, some 11 million undocumented immigrants face the possibility of imprisonment and deportation. Yet the federal government does nothing to enact any semblance of a comprehensive immigration reform policy. Why is that, and what possible sense does it make? I would argue that it makes no rational sense at all until we ask the question, who is profiting from this lack of legislation? And then suddenly, it starts to make perfect sense. In his article for the news website Truthdig, journalist Chris Hedges makes the following connection between immigration reform and the prison industrial complex. Nearly half of all immigrants detained by the federal government are shipped to for-profit prisons. And one of the largest operators and owners of a for-profit prison in this country is the Corrections Corporation of America. It has annual revenues in excess of $1.7 billion and is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The CCA, along with other for-profit prisons and their lobbyists in Washington and state capitals, have successfully blocked immigration reform and are pushing through tougher detention policies across the boards. And these corporations are the reason that we've spent $300 billion on new prisons since 1980, and they're also the reason that serious reform is impossible. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which imprisons about 400,000 undocumented people a year, has an annual budget of more than $5 billion. The ICE is planning to expand its operations by establishing several mega detention centers, most run by private corporations in states such as New Jersey, Texas, Florida, California, and Illinois. In the Corporation of America's annual report to the Securities and Exchange Commission, cited by the ACLU, the company bluntly stated The demand for our facilities and services could be adversely affected by the relaxation of enforcement efforts. They go on to warn that any changes with respect to drugs and controlled substances or illegal immigration could potentially reduce demand for correctional facilities. The two largest private prison companies in 2010 received nearly $3 billion in revenue. The senior executives, according to an ACLU report, each received annual compensation packages worth well over $3 million. Reflecting upon the immorality of a private corporation in collusion with the federal government profiting from the misery of millions of undocumented workers. Chris Hedges concludes his article with the following warning. We have abandoned the common good. We have been stripped of our rights and voice. Corporations write our laws and determine how we structure our societies. We have all become victims, and there are no politicians or institutions, no political parties or courts that are independent enough or strong enough to resist the corporate onslaught. Greater and greater numbers of human beings will be consumed. The poor, the vulnerable, the undocumented, the weak, the elderly, the sick, the children will go first, and those of us watching helplessly outside the gates will go next. Today, I will be joined by Fernando Paz, a community organizer from the True North Organizing Network. True North is working to organize communities across local tribal lands, Del Norte and Humboldt counties. True North is an affiliate of PICO, People Improving Communities Through Organizing. PICO is a national network of faith-based community organizations working to create innovative solutions to problems facing urban, suburban, and rural communities. I hope you will enjoy the discussion. Good afternoon, Fernando.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
For many, many years, I mean, certainly long before I was born, I came from southern Indiana, and I remember as a little child, seeing the Mexican people out in the summertime picking the tomatoes and the muskmelons and the cantaloupes and this and that. And so, we have been exploiting, their labor for generations and generations, generations and generations.
Since the 40s.
That's okay, right?
A little older than.
Yeah. That's okay that we exploit other people's labor. What's not okay is that when we are called on our own hypocrisy and immorality. Yeah. And we want to pass ourselves off as a Christian nation. Yeah. And clearly, this oligarchic corporate, our oligarchic corporate masters certainly do not conduct themselves in accordance with the teachings of Jesus. Yeah. And they have to be called on this. And I think that given the history of the church's faith-based communities' traditional roles in social justice, that I really think that the faith communities have to stand and deliver. When is enough, right?
Yeah.
When do you say no? When do you say we aren't going to take this anymore and we are going to rise up? And that doesn't mean that we are going to rise up with clubs in our hands or guns in our pocket, but it means that we are going to rise up in mass and put an end to this once and for all.
And part of it is how to make that moral crisis, right? That a moral imperative for people to act. I think that there are enough people in Humboldt County that can, people of conscience, people of faith, people of good intentions and goodwill who would act and mobilize to create a more just system. Because it's not just about the undocumented worker. I mean, we can talk about the undocumented worker and the issue of immigration, but once you pull on that thread, you start seeing that it bleeds. I mean, it literally bleeds into so much more. And you were talking about the prison industrial complex, absolutely. Right? I mean, let's talk about labor. Let's talk about health and the health systems, right? I mean, when we talk about the issue of immigration, we're talking about us. We're talking about you. We're talking about families. We're talking about mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and aunts and uncles, right? We're talking about families. We're talking about people in our community who contribute daily and do jobs that nobody else wants to do, right? We're talking about creating a change that uplifts everybody, right? That is, and part of it being postmodern is going beyond the discourses of, you know the problem with the revolution, right? You know the problem with the revolution?
What's that?
That once the revolution is achieved, it's betrayed. Because that's the problem with modernist forms of power and the modernist ideas of revolution, right? We're going to storm the city hall and we're going to take power, but then we end up replicating the systems of oppression that we just dismantled. So part of what True North, the nuance, what makes it a postmodern is that we're going beyond revolution with the big R, a change with the big C, right? We're going for deep transformative change that's long term, that fundamentally changes the way everybody lives. Because Black people aren't the only ones that suffer from white supremacy, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just the working poor that suffer from capitalist social relations. It's not just the women that suffer from patriarchy. Men suffer from patriarchy too, because of the machismo, because of the dumb things we think we believe as men, right? So and if we're not taking all that into consideration, the race, class, and gendered aspects of the systems of oppression that we live under, then the change that we're going to create is going to be short-lived. It's going to be short-term, and in the end, we're going to end up replicating the same system that we tried to overthrow. So, in inviting people to think of a prophetic visioning, I mean, I think of Brueggemann when he talks about Walter Brueggemann, when he talks about having the prophetic vision. It's not that we are saying the future is going to be this way. What we're saying is that with God's grace and with the values and the beliefs that we have, we can begin to envision the future that we can't dictate, but we can start to think about in the poetics that we have now, right? And start to imagine it through the stories, through the vision, through the music, through an imaginary that will lead us to a better world. When Martin Luther King talked about going to the mountaintop and reaching the mountaintop, and he knowing that he won't be able to get there with us, but that's the mountaintop that we're looking for, to stand on that mountaintop and to begin to see a better world for not just for me and for my children and for my community, but for our communities. Mm-hmm. And that's all of humanity.
Our community. You know, as you know, I was present that day on May Day when that march occurred, and I tell you, I was deeply moved by that. You know, there's something about human beings getting together in love and respect for one another, that when you see that in mass, you know, you see the power and the beauty of the love of God, you know, and that is so powerful, you know, and it's so beautiful, and it has nothing to do with coercion. You know, it has nothing to do with commodities, or it has nothing to do with money. You know, and I would like to end the program. You know, as you know, we took some. We were out there and filmed some of the march, and I would like to end the program here with a few excerpts from that. But I really want to thank you for coming here and talking to us, and for your prophetic vision and the sacrifices that you make on behalf of your people for the common good of the people here. I greatly admire you and respect your ministry here in this community. Thanks so much, brother.
Thank you.
In September 2008, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents raided Sun Valley Farms in Arcata, California, arresting 23 people and placing some in deportation proceedings. On May 1st, 2016, North Coast residents marched in solidarity with migrant workers worldwide and in support of the repeal of the Sun Valley Workers' Deportation Orders. The march was organized by the True North Organizing Network, an affiliate of PICO, People Improving Communities Through Organizing. This short video is a synopsis of that afternoon. As the nation gathers this weekend to celebrate Mother's Day, we are reminded of the abolitionist and suffragette Julia Ward Howe, who in 1870 wrote her Mother's Day Proclamation, a call to action that asks mothers to unite in promoting world peace. In her proclamation, Julia wrote, "In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women be appointed and held to promote the alliance of different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace."
Cuando nos avisaron que inmigración estaba en el parqueadero, teníamos que salir con una lista de 50 personas. Lastimadamente, yo no estaba en esa lista, pero me afectó. Aún estando ahí, cuando el manager dijo que teníamos que salir para que fuéramos con inmigración, nosotros tratamos de escondernos. Yo y otras compañeras nos escondimos, pero lastimosamente había helicópteros, perros, los oficiales ya nos estaban mirando desde el helicóptero donde nosotros nos escondimos. Cuando nos encontraron, llegó la policía y nos dijo que teníamos que salir con las manos en alto, porque si no salíamos, nos iban a soltar los perros. Ese fue mi mayor miedo, que los perros nos atacaran. Y ya después nosotros salimos con las manos en alto y en ese momento nos estaban apuntando con sus pistolas, como si fuéramos unos criminales. Pero no somos criminales, somos trabajadores.
We're also a country full of immigrants. Each and every one of us was an immigrant, unless we are Native American, and they're allowing us to be in their indigenous country. Also other indigenous tribes I know throughout, but the rest of us are all immigrants coming from some country or another, and we have to welcome the stranger. And if we're people of faith, whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, that is our command, to welcome and love the stranger, because Scripture tells us, thereby we have entertained angels unawares. Each and every one of you brings such a gift to our country. And for people to be afraid or treat people as less than human, that's just wrong. That's just wrong. And our denominations have to join and always be in solidarity with you for a path to citizenship and for equal rights, and for you to come out of the shadows and not be afraid. And our churches are willing to provide sanctuary for anybody who needs it. So thank you for being here. God bless.
Turning and turning in harmonious rhyme, stars are exploding.